Hey everybody, my name is Ted Forbes and welcome back to another episode of The Art of Photography. And today we're going to talk about some post-processing, and I want to take a look at another app that I found called Focus 2. Focus 2 is made by the folks at MacPhun, who a couple weeks ago we did an episode on Intensity Pro, which is another fabulous application that they make. And today I want to look at Focus 2, and this is a desktop app that basically deals with selective focus techniques. And this is post-processing, and what it emulates is if you've ever used a perspective control lens, Nikon and Canon, the big companies, all make PC lenses, is what that stands for. And they're basically designed similar to how large format cameras work, where you can actually tilt and shift and move the standards on the large format camera, where you're basically able to do that with your lens. And what it does is it changes the juxtaposition to the film plane or the sensor plane to where your picture's being taken. The idea behind this originally was for something like architectural photos, things of that nature, is that, you're able to control some of the perspective distortions that you see in the lens. And a lot of photographers, and myself included, have also enjoyed using these the wrong way, and what it does is actually throws the focus plane. And you can get some really interesting tilt and shift effects where you actually narrow the focus into a specific deal. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. But you've seen one of the current trends that you see a lot is people who take, kind of urban landscape stuff, and then they'll put the focus plane down into one thin strip, and it makes cars look like little miniature cars sometimes as an interesting visual effect. But there's other effects you can do with this too. If you've ever used a macro lens, your depth of field is extremely shallow, and it's really interesting to kind of play with the software to emulate a lot of these things, because what you're doing is you're able to really put selective focus and emphasis on certain things in your composition in your photograph. And there's obviously several ways you would do this. It is a lot of fun to use the lenses and stuff, but sometimes you're in a situation where maybe it's an image you took on a mobile phone or your camera or something like that, a point and shoot DSLR. You don't have or can't afford perspective shift lenses, and using post-processing is certainly a legitimate way to do it. And what MacPhun have done with Focus 2 is they've created a really interesting way, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, using gestures on the trackpad, or if you have a external trackpad on a Mac, that allow you to really shift that control, and it's a really easy app to do. And what's really cool is the introductory price on this is $15. So this is something that is amazing. It's really cool. We're going to talk about it in a second, and I'm going to put it through its paces, and we're going to see how it stacks up. So let's go over to the computer, and without further ado, I want to show you Focus 2. Okay, so we're going to take a look at Focus 2 here, and I want to show you how this works and why I'm pretty impressed with this. First of all, it's a very simple application. What it deals with is selective focus control, or basically, if you've ever dealt with perspective control lenses or even macro lenses, and what it's going to do is it's going to, as a way of putting a blur into your image that you can control, that allows you to bring attention to or emphasize certain parts of your image. And I think the easiest way to show you is just let's go ahead and bring in an image and check it out. I've got some test images over here. And so what you do is you basically drag one and drop it onto the Focus 2 window, and it will open. Now, what you're going to see in the interface is a couple things. First of all, we can go full screen mode with this if we want. I have a crop button down here, so if I select crop, it's going to give me the grid lines, and I'll be able to crop and such if you need to do any adjustment there. Also, you can, over here, you have your basically 6 different modes of selective focus. So right now I've selected portrait, which is a circular orientation, and you can see that it puts the guidelines on here. Now with each one of these controls over on the right-hand side, you can control various aspects of what's going on with the image. So for instance, the aperture controls how much blur you want in that outside circle, for instance. So if I crank that all the way up, you're going to see basically very soft focus on the edges, and where your focus point is in the middle. Also, I can turn up the vignette, so I can actually darken the stuff that's blurred, which is nice. So as you can see, we're really bringing emphasis into this guy in here. And I'm going to show you how you can control some of this too. You can control the size of that circle and where we want actually that placement of focus versus non-focus to be. Obviously, I've got this cranked up all the way, but you can find sweet spots in here. Maybe I don't want it quite so blurred on the edges. And anyway, at any time, if you want to toggle the view of what we're seeing, you can hit the space bar on your keyboard and it will go back to the original image. And if I hit the space bar again, I'm going to go in and see the affected image that I've done here. And you can also control the vividness if you want to turn it black and white, for instance, or if you want to make it super saturated in color, you can do that as well over here with this slider. There is auto enhancement if you want to use that as well. It's basic level and color correction. I found that the real beauty of this app is just in the versatility and being able to play with a couple simple controls. that if you're into, selective focus like this, it's really pretty cool. The other cool thing that I think makes this app a complete winner is the fact that it uses the trackpad. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, this is Mac only on this software, so there is no Windows version of this. But if you have a Mac and you have a trackpad, like on a laptop, or if you have the Bluetooth trackpad, you can actually control using gestures with a lot of these things. So for instance, if I go over to the crop mode, and I'll show you how this works. Basically, if I take two fingers on the trackpad and spread them apart, it's going to zoom in and zoom back out. So when you get really quick with gestures on here, it makes this really fast to edit in, which is really pretty cool. The other thing I can do is if I go over here into some of these, let me close this and let's select a new image on here. So let's go new image. And what I want to do this time is I want to show you how the perspective control works with like a landscape here. So let's drop this over. Okay, so this is just a street scene, not a great photo, but this is, for our example here, this is something I shot in New York last year. And so if I select one of my modes here, and you can see they all kind of do different things. So portrait mode is a circular orientation. Nature gives you, your horizontal or vertical, depending on which way I spin this. I have architecture over here. I have macro. We can do full tilt shift. And also there's a custom. And the custom is kind of cool because it allows you to come over here and actually just paint into a red area, and it makes that the blurred area, which is kind of cool. So when I mouse outside the screen, I can see that that is my selective focus. So it allows you just to paint on what it is that you want to focus on, which is pretty cool. Let's go back to tilt shift here. And again, what I do, if I mouse over here, I can grab these handles and I can spin, but I can also put two fingers on the trackpad and just rotate that way, which is really pretty cool. You can see how I'm doing that. We've got a B angle camera in here. So anyway, and also spreading them apart will increase the size of the, I guess this is kind of a blur gradient, because what it does is it applies a mask filter, and it's actually going to just blur out what's on the outer edges. So very simple application, but very cool. And so if you want to do kind of the classic perspective shift, we'll get a real narrow focus on the sidewalk in here. And when I mouse out, you can see that it does put a selective focus there. Now, depending on if I have the aperture cranked all the way up, you can see real hard lines as to where the blur and the focus areas are, and you probably don't want that. You want it to be a little more natural. So I want it somewhere in the middle, and you can kind of see where that is. The vignette also helps. So what it's going to do is darken out those areas that are selective focus, and you can see I probably still have hard lines there I want to back off on. But anyway, this is the effect that you can get and really draw the eye in and enhance images. And, this is the street scene is kind of the classic thing that, you see a lot of people doing. But I just kind of like using this on all kinds of different images. Let's try another one here, and I'll show you here. Let's... So here's one, for instance. This was shot in a bar. Lighting is uneven, and actually my focus was off. You can see that she is not in focus, and I was using autofocus, which, is dangerous work. But sometimes you can kind of fake that out a little bit, because I don't mind a soft focus on her necessarily. But if we pull a vignette back and tighten up our aperture a little bit, it's still soft focus, but I'm not distracted by the sharpness that's off. Now, I'm not saying you would want to use this to correct an image, because you're never going to be able to do that. You need to shoot it correctly. But it is interesting, kind of some of the effects that you can do. I might do a tilt shift, swing this, and then I'll turn it. And like I said, being able to use the gestures on the trackpad is, it really makes this quick work when you start getting into it. So I can start to kind of, maybe we want to make this actually diagonal. So I can start to play with it and kind of actually rescue an image that, may have been a little out of whack on here, so to speak. So anyway, some really cool stuff you can do with that. And another really cool application that you can use on here is for portraits. And this one is already converted to black and white. I'm sorry, I don't want to open it. I want to open it in Focus 2. So let's do a new image. Let's drag and drop over here. And what's really cool on this is, let's go into crop, and I want to make this a real tight crop on her face. And what we're going to do is emulate some of the macro kinds of images that you can do on here, which I think is pretty cool. So let's go into, we can play with portrait if we want, and literally you just move this around and it's going to give you a selective focus. And really already right out of the box, it just kind of does a good job at that. I can make that really tight, so if I just kind of want to see her eyes in focus, let's bring a vignette in to make it a little more natural on the feel. And as you can see, I'm really starting to fine-tune that area that I want into focus. Let's make the focus area a little big, so it's just on her face. So the hand is blurred maybe. Let's bring it a little tighter. There we go. Now I'm starting to get an effect. Again, hit the space bar to compare to the original. Let's go back. This was shot on black and white film, so that's why I don't have color on here. But you can really start to bring that in and do some interesting stuff with this. I can really turn up the vignette if I want and really darken those outside areas. And it really gives a soft, kind of interesting, beautiful look to it. Let's turn down the aperture just a little bit. So anyway, here we got something interesting that I'm playing with light effects almost that I didn't have before, and we're really bringing the eye of the viewer into the eyes of the portrait. There's different things you can do with this too. I mean, if I go with the macro, for instance, macro is going to give you a really tight area. And so it may or may not be something that is useful, but let's play around with it and see. Let's bring the aperture down a little bit. So similar effect. So if there's something you really want to highlight in the image, maybe we don't want our eyes to be the focus. I don't know. I'm just playing around. But there's a lot you can do with this, which is really, really pretty cool. There, it's kind of nice. You get a soft focus. So anyway, and once again, they've got this custom setting over here where literally all I do is I go in, adjust the size of my brush, and I go in and I paint. And it's going to give me red where I'm painting. And so, for instance, that's going to be the area that's in focus. So let's undo that. Let's go back. Let's reset all here. And let's adjust the size of the brush. Let's bring that down. And I'm going to bring the hardness. Let's play with that a little bit too. So now I can see that when let's say we just want her eyes to be in focus, voila, it couldn't be any more easy. Maybe I want a portion of the nose too because I want it to be a little more natural. And you can see that maybe I want to bring the aperture down just a little bit. And you can play with this hardness aspect of it. But anyway, there's some really neat effects that you can get. And essentially all we're doing is we're playing with masks. Now, notice that when I bring the vignette up on this, you're going to see the paint lines. That's because I have a real hard edge on that brush. So probably what I want to do is reset that. Let's make the brush real soft. And let's bring it in here like this. And now it'll be probably less prominent when I crank up the vignette. We're going to need to reset all because I was painting over the original. But anyway, you can see that there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do. So this is Focus 2 by the folks at MacPhun. Also, I just realized that when I went back to the portrait, it remembered my settings. So if you're playing around, that's kind of cool because it gives you that as a starting point when you go back in. This is a $15 app, folks, and I think it's well worth exploring. I'm going to have a link in the show notes, so depending on where you're watching that. If you're watching it on your iPhone or something and you need to refer back to this and want to see the show notes, you can always find those at our website, which is theartofphotography.tv. So no .com, it's theartofphotography.tv. And anyway, that is Focus 2 from the folks at MacPhun. Okay, so that is Focus 2 from the folks at MacPhun. I hope you check that out. It does a lot of wonderful stuff. I've been using this for about a week now, and I'm really impressed. It's a lot of fun. And it really, I think at the price point, it's an essential tool for me to have when I need to do tilt shift and selective focus effects. $15 you cannot beat. So check it out. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. You can see that depending on where you're watching the video, either below or you can go to our show website, which is theartofphotography.tv. Find this episode on there and check it out. So special thanks to the folks at MacPhun for making cool stuff for us to play with and use. So anyway, before I close the show out today, I want to make another quick news item here. We are bringing the photography show back, and I will be ready to formally announce that hopefully next week in the next episode. There's been a lot of work that I've done on that this week. We're going to be beefing up the website. We're going to make it a little more interactive with questions and answers, and that all requires setting up a bunch of stuff to make this happen. We're also redoing the show identities and all this. If you're not familiar with the photography show, it does not replace the Art of Photography. This is another show that I'm going to be doing. And I've done this since about 2010 with my buddy Wade Griffith, who is an excellent photographer and a very funny guy. And it's a lot of fun. And people have requested this because a lot of times they love the Art of Photography, but the time they have to catch up on podcasts and shows and stuff typically is mobile. It's in the car, stuff like that. Had a lot of requests for people who want to see it on Stitcher. And a lot of those things don't really support video really well because I definitely don't want you guys watching video and driving at the same time. So the photography show is an additional show that we do that we're going to bring back. Now, the reason we stopped doing it is because schedules get wild and whatnot. When I bring this back, I'm going to definitely be doing it every week, and Wade will join us as much as he can. If schedules collide or something like that, I'll still do a show. Maybe we'll expand on some of the things we've talked about on this show, particularly when we get into the historical stuff, photo lit, famous photographer episodes. Those are fun. And, we're a little restricted in the time that we can do with video because the file size just gets huge if I go over about 20 minutes. So anyway, so look for that. It'll be coming up. We're still working on that this week. New website, new everything. So we're really sprucing it up to bring it back. So anyway, I will make a formal announcement that's ready, but just know that it's coming up, and I hope you guys get excited about that. Anyway, once again, this has been the Art of Photography, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next week. Later.